Good morning and welcome. I call this meeting of the Governance Committee to order. We'll start with roll call. Councillor Lombardi.
Here.
Councillor Tabor.
Here.
And I'm Councillor Cook, and I am here. I hope everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the October 10th meeting of the Governance Committee.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion?
Not for me.
No.
Okay. With that, all in favor of approving the minutes from the October 10th, 2023 Governance Committee meeting?
Aye.
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 All right, the minutes are approved. We have a short agenda today. The only item on the agenda is the end of year reporting for this committee out to the council. I wanted to discuss with the committee members what we would prefer for end of year reporting. If we want end of year reporting, what are the thoughts on continuing governance committee next year, and additional work the committee might have to do that we could report out to the council. So, any thoughts? And we noting that
I guess what I would like to understand is, I mean, what's still in front of us. I mean, we've gone through a lot of ordinances. We've gone through policies. I know there are some things we want to look at in terms of the big document. What is it?
Charter.
Charter.
Oh.
Yeah. So it seems to me we have more work to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our best work has been reviewing all the committees. I went back through my file, and there's good work. We sunsetted 6 committees that were no longer active. The Building Commission, the Board of Health, the Micro Enterprise Committee, the Pierce Island Committee, the Vaughan Mall Committee. And then we cleaned up and the EDC, and we created permanent Sustainability Committee, Arts Commission, and Public Art Review Committee. And I think all those are good work. That more benefits will flow from those in the future. We left open whether citywide neighborhoods should become permanent or not. And we talked about parks a lot, but we never created any commission or board around parks or expanded parks to be part of Recreation Board. Maybe that discussion dies. I think there's merit in a citizen committee that advocates for parks and programming. And then the Energy Advisory Committee, we've left that it stays a blue ribbon committee at this point. But a lot of towns and cities have permanent energy committees. I don't think we're there yet till we know the mission and the goals, but that might. So I could see us working further on parks and recreation, energy, and citywide neighborhoods. Now, how often do we have to meet to do that kind of work? That's a good question. Maybe we drop back to monthly or quarterly, but we're always on tap. And I think there's always a need. And in a lot of organizations, the governance committee is tasked with helping recruit people. So those are just thoughts that I had.
Okay.
And I don't know if, the charter is something that the council wants to have just a completely separate committee on, too. Or whether that is something that we should make recommendations to the council. That's a question I had for that.
I would think that any charter change recommendations would come to the governance committee. I think that was in the original resolution. So I think it would come here. And so any recommended changes should come before us. I do agree that we have some unfinished business around parks, definitively. Also, the questions around the Citywide Neighborhood Committee and Energy Advisory. I also think that there's a lot more in the administrative ordinance that we haven't tackled, that maybe we just need to do a quick review to make sure that it's up to date where we need to be. I was looking at the administrative ordinances. There's a whole section on the RFP process. There's sections we need to be more mindful of that are in there, I think, and make sure that those are updated for and reflect the wishes not just of the council, but also of the city staff, because I think there's some things there that they might want to update and change. I think we also need to be looking at any other parts of our ordinance beyond the administrative ordinance. So, yes.
I can just share that staff is expecting that there are going to be a number of ordinances that will be coming through for the city council's consideration over the next term, including a complete probably rewrite of our sewer use ordinance with all the new industrial pretreatment requirements that we're required to put in place for purposes of our newly issued permits at Pease and Pierce Island. May also have the stormwater utility ordinance coming forward. We're waiting to see how some things shake out in the world of EPA and residual designation, which is the CLF petition, and Dover's kind of having some of the conversations about how to mesh those two. So there is some work that we already see coming forward. We know we have some of the solar energy and other pieces that are on track, we think, to come up at the beginning of the year. So just know that there's already some work in the pipeline. So just wanted to keep talking about that because it's coming.
Great.
So here's a question. North Conway did a lot of work on their zoning to allow more density. I don't know how they did that, but how would we do that? Would that be a governance committee, or would that be a planning board, a pure land use, master plan land use planning board?
I think it's a conversation you can have with Peter Britz, but I think it really probably, given where we are about to launch a new master plan, it seems to me that that would be the place to begin that conversation, because you're going to need a lot of community buy-in if you're going to make some kind of more substantive changes to the current zoning ordinance. So it would seem to me that that would be the logical way to build up that momentum and that conversation as part of that process, and then it gets rolled out. But I think if you're going to meet again, then that's a conversation to have with the planning director is sustainability. And typically that does go through, usually the planning board has quite a process typically before it reaches the city council.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have questions as well about any additional committees. One of the things that I had been considering for the council was a diversity, equity, inclusion type committee, or whether or not that should be addressed at governance, those issues. And the reason this was raised, it was raised with me, for me, by a few different advocates, around accessibility issues, that they don't feel like they have a separate voice to kind of consider all things around the city beyond just beyond just coming to individual meetings to talk, like coming to parking and traffic safety and saying, I'm concerned about ramps in this location, but having that bigger discussion around accessibility. But it was also raised that this might be a good vehicle, either at governance or creating a separate DEI committee that can talk about issues around, controversial issues around equity and inclusion. For example, concerns around Columbus Day, changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and bringing people together to have those conversations and discuss it in a more meaningful way across communities. So that's also something that has kind of bubbled up in the last few months for me. And so I have questions. Is it reasonable to have a separate committee at the city level that thinks about those things? Or is that something that we ask another committee to deal with? And so we change another ordinance to address that, or we ask a subcommittee like governance to address. So, but that's a conversation we'd have to have that we're clearly not primed for having today, but maybe that is another conversation we can have as well.
Yeah, wouldn't that, I mean, if we as a council set equity and inclusion as a policy goal, and then we asked, how do we make that policy happen?
Exactly.
So that almost becomes a topic for the
The January meeting,
the
the planning,
retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, and
goal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might, I think we had on our sort of management calendar a possible orientation day in December, which we could then maybe repurpose for, retreat goal setting, because earlier is usually better. So that's a discussion that we were going to have with you all in terms of maybe we use that time in December to do that work, knowing how busy January tends to be with all the other items that are sort of coming down the pike beginning of next year. The other piece is to your question about where do you hold difficult conversations. I will say you want to talk to the library. They have been working to set the forums for some of those difficult conversations, and I'm sure Christine and or Laura, the director or assistant director, could come and speak to that, because they have been doing some of that hard work to set up those forums, which allow for a variety of participation and bringing in speakers. So there is some of that happening in the community now. I'd also say with regard to the accessibility issue, I know from a public works, facilities perspective, we of course are governed by the Americans with Disabilities Act, and certainly to the extent we're talking about public infrastructure, I would say we've done training in-house recently to kind of update ourselves on the requirements and opportunities, frankly, to make some improvements. And I think the tricky part will be is if there is going to be a new committee or consideration, just being mindful of there's our implementation role, and then there's the policy role of direction, and just finding that right balance point. But I want to let you know we did do some recent training on that at Public Works, specifically to, again, sometimes it's looking at opportunities that maybe other communities have found a way to make some improvements that are good for everyone. So,
Yes, I think the city is doing a very good job in being mindful. I think there are always concerns that, are our voices being heard adequately? And that's always the question you get. And so I think that's the, making sure that we include all voices, I think is the critical thing there. And so that's why it's been raised with me a few times. Where does this belong? And so I have some questions around where does this belong, really? What is the best way to address these issues? So So I think that that's where my thinking is. So I feel like the committee does have more work to do. I feel like we gave a report out to the council, a pretty extensive report was it end of August? And so I don't feel like we need to do a full report on everything we've accomplished unless you both think that makes sense at this stage.
Or maybe just a short written update that's in the packet,
Okay?
a couple of paragraphs,
Okay?
since the August update.
Okay. If you want me to, I can prepare something like that before our next meeting on December 4th, so you both have a chance to review it, and we could put it in the packet for December 18th for that last meeting, if we approve it or make changes to it December 4th. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking my December 4th is busy, but,
I
yeah.
don't think that we'll be adding anything else to the agenda beyond that, and potentially, there's an item at the council tonight that could come to governance around the rec board changes. So I'm holding that meeting still on December 4th in case those changes come to governance so that we can discuss them. And then it would just be approving the final report out. And the reason we're not doing any substantive work today or in December is because we will have ordinance changes coming forward. So there's nothing we can really push forward at this point to the council. And I think this is a busy time of year that everyone would appreciate a little bit of a break.
Yeah. Well, as our agenda tonight shows, we've brought a lot of action forward. So
Right.
it's not like we've been sitting on the couch eating bonbons.
I think the council might appreciate a little bit of a break from governance committee items coming forward for at least a month.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yes.
I just want to make a comment about the library and the Levinson Room, and that is, it's a great space, and I think it's a safer place for people to come to than council chambers. One of the problems is the access to Zoom is limited in that council chambers has multiple cameras, and I guess I would advocate that their technology there be upgraded, because I think the city could really use the Levinson Room much more if that technology was there. Right now, it just points to the front of the room. And, I don't know what it would take to do that, but I think that people are much more comfortable coming and speaking out at the Levinson Room than they are at city council chambers.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's actually on our list in terms of management's list, when we did the wastewater 101 and found it, that we could have done better from a technology point of view in terms of how to capture what we were sharing and the back and forth with, the residents. So that's in the works to examine
Right.
how we might best utilize that space and whether it needs any technology upgrades to improve that, because I think you're right that a lot of folks understand that the library is often considered kind of that safe place and a place for free exchange in a respectful manner. And
That's what the library is.
Yeah.
That
So-
represents that.
yeah.
Yeah, good.
Is there anything else that we want to discuss around end-of-year report or what we need to be thinking about for next year?
Have you, as chair, do you have any future items you see us moving towards?
Well, I know, and I will discuss this with the mayor, the rules will come back to the council again in January. I think that this governance needs to look at the rules again. I think it's healthy to go through the rules every 2 years and make sure that we are reviewing them and that they adequately meet our needs. I do have questions around public dialogue, which were some changes that we made this year, but did not seem to be, or last year, but didn't seem to be particularly effective at getting more engagement in the community. So maybe we need to revisit that as well early in January, so that the council can adopt those rules changes and including that potentially something else around public dialogue. And I'm not going to prejudge which that should be, but we need to be thinking about that. I do think that if we are going to consider any charter changes, those should also happen really early
Yes.
in the year.
Because they need to be ready to go in August.
Yes. And so we, I don't have anything in mind in particular around charter changes that need to come forward. But I
But
think,
that's come up in several instances, yes.
yes, it has. And I think, though, we need to, though, go through the charter in more depth, which we actually didn't do
Right.
as a committee. We specifically looked at certain provisions that we were asked to look at, but we didn't look at the whole charter. So we should make sure that our practice currently reflects what's in the charter, and if it doesn't, maybe we need to consider whether or not to put forward changes to the charter. So I think that that's an important consideration. Beyond that, I think it's healthy to continue the rest of these conversations that we've started and not finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Is there anyone on Zoom? No, there's no one in the room.
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay. Then I'll close public comment. Are there any announcements besides the December 4th meeting? No?
Just that tomorrow night, tomorrow night is the presentation of the archive committee in the Levinson room, 6 o'clock, I believe. And it will, a lot of good work has been done, and it is the recommendation to continue a committee pursuing a public-private archive.
Great.
And that is actually on the website. It's in the summary is on the website now in the calendar. I believe it's in the calendar now already.
Okay, I haven't looked,
Yeah.
but I.
Great. All right. If that's it, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.